You know, the great Leslie Nielsen has had a lot of lives in his career. He did leave us to mourn a few years back, but starting off with the CBC, ended up in episodic drama in the States, started working for Disney a little bit, went over again to episodic television, but with Airplane and Naked Gun series, he became one of the most important, what he calls satirical or, clean humor comedians of the last number of years. But he hit a new level in his career with something that still scares a lot of people. Uh, it's called Something to Tide You Over. Now, he had appeared in Night Gallery in a couple of episodes, one comedic where he played to Phantom of the Opera, and of course the famous incident where he played a soldier for hire who basically was forced to stay a night in a haunted house in order to battle his enemies. But in Something to Tide You Over in Creepshow, scary as old frig. Now, you're probably wondering what Creepshow is. Well, it's kind of based on the EC Comics style of a couple of decades past. The concept of the movie, it was an anthology horror comedy film directed by George A. Romero and written by Stephen King, which was made him this film his screenwriting debut. The film's ensemble cast includes Hal Holbrook, Adrienne Barbeau, Fritz Weaver, Kerry Nye, E.J. Marshall, Vivica Lindfors, and Ed Harris, with Leslie Nielsen and Ted Danson in this heavy episode. Now, the homage to the EC horror comics of the 50s and 60s, including Tales from the Crypt, which was the unofficial TV sequel to this movie, The Vault of Horror and The Haunt of Fear. In order for film to give viewers a comic book feel, Romero hired longtime effects specialist Tom Savani to replicate comic-like effects. And of course, Gowan took inspiration from this for his Criminal Mind video just a few years later. Now, the film earned $21 million in the States. It was followed by an '87 sequel, Creepshow 2, which was based on stories by King. A second sequel, Creepshow 3, was released in 2006 without involvement from either Romero or King. Now, released on November 12th, 82, and at 120 minutes, pretty long for a horror movie, but it did get a release at Cannes 6 months before, May 16th, 82. Cost $8 million, and basically box office is 21. Now, Something to Tide You Over, and my good pal of the channel, our Forensic Independent Authors Association member, Bev Vincent, who has done work with King several years, can probably back me up. This is what I think the best watery episode Stephen King ever did. Now, this one, and it's scary. Richard Vickers is a vicious and heartless millionaire whose spry jocularity belies his cold-blooded and murderous nature. He visits Harry Wentworth, the man to whom his wife Becky is having an affair. Richard mentions that he and Becky never shared any actual affection, but such is beside the issue. Richard's point of honor is always keeping what's his, a rule that he enforces no matter what. Rather than physically assault Harry, Richard plays a recording of Becky's voice, where she tearfully begs Harry to help her. Both men travel to Comfort Point, Richard's isolated beach house. Richard points out what appears to be a burial mound in the sand. When Harry promptly runs to it, Richard pulls a gun at him. He forces Harry to jump in the empty hole and begin burying himself. Now, the buried alive motif has been done on land in many ways, but the way it is put together, it's just creeping terror. Now, eventually, Richard finishes burying Harry's neck deep in the sand below the high tide line. Richard then sets up a closed-circuit TV camera and a VCR to record Harry. He also brings along a monitor displaying Becky, who was also buried up to her neck further down the beach, where the rising tide is already washing over her face. Richard does not tell Harry that he and Becky have a chance of survival. If they can hold their breath long enough for the sand to loosen, once the seawater covers them, they can break free and escape. With that, Richard abandons Harry and returns to Comfort Point. Sipping a cocktail, Richard watches with great satisfaction as Harry and Becky slowly drown. But in the midst of this, the Richard is starting to have, mixed feelings, where he was very, very happy. At one point, he's kind of downcast. Now, just before Harry is completely submerged by the advancing tide, he looks directly into the camera and vows revenge on Richard. And there's a long shot where Ted Danson's character is completely underwater. You don't know if it's going to get out or not. He's sort of like bloodily backlit. Now, hours later, Richard returns to Harry's grave to collect the tape. He finds a ruined monitor but no sign of Harry. Not disturbed, Richard writes it off as the body having been carried away by the current. Later that night, Richard hears voices calling his name as a mysterious unseen presence easily bypasses Comfort Point's extensive security system. The culprits turn out to be Harry and Becky, the two lovers having returned as waterlogged, seaweed-covered revenants, intent on revenge on their killer. Richard shoots them, but when the bullets have no effect, he barricades himself in his bedroom, only to find Becky and Harry already inside. The two victims taunt Richard, who laughs insanely. Now, sometime later, the undead lovers have buried Richard up to his neck on the beach. They have since disappeared together in the surf, leaving Richard's own seaweed-covered video camera to record his coming demise. As the approaching tide proceeds to drown him, the hysterical Richard screams that he can hold his breath for a long time. So, the way Romero uses King's words, it's almost like it's a turning page of the comic book. This is the closest thing that King has come in perfection with one of his short things. This could easily be a Twilight Zone episode, Night Gallery. It's that strong. Now, the other parts of the movie are okay. Anytime you see Adrian Barbeau and Ed Harris and some of the key actors, but there's a lot of Night Gallery connections with that, and that's why it works out. You believe that the characters are who they are. Ted Danson is very handsome in this episode, kind of how good he looked in Body Heat, that movie, that film noir that he did, I think just a year before. But I don't know why they waited 6 months for the time of Cannes to make it come in this movie. Now, why this is important for a lot of people who love Stephen King, the idea is that he, I think, took great care to write this that would fit the comic book motif that Romero wanted. Now, Leslie Nielsen and Ted Danson, you wouldn't think they have chemistry like that. They have great chemistry in this episode. And this before Cheers as well. Not saying Ted Danson was unknown, but Leslie Nielsen was the most known factor. He done like Fantasy Islands, Love Boats, and stuff like that. I give this episode 4 out of 4 because basically, in a way, you never know what's going to happen until the end. And the music and cinematography just tremendous. Like that score, it's kind of lilting and it tells more of a story than the two actors. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have an afternoon, I think Hollywood Suite in Canada is showing this on its archive of this month. It's also being shown on the regular channels. Check it out if you haven't seen it. It's really, really good. And like I said, it's the best Night Gallery episode that was never Night Gallery. Have a good one. Bye.